Michaela_Lemon. Hi.
Hello, Michaela. Welcome back. How are you? How's things? Shredder, how are you? Is that right? What's going on? Yeah, it's hard to know, isn't it? Hard to know for sure. You trace history back that far. Ah, I see. The chief cornerstone. What makes him the chief cornerstone? Oh, is that right? People didn't want to know him, right? He had a lot of problem talking to people. Why do you think that is? I guess that's a fair assessment. What about you? Are you ready for spiritual evolution? And how are you going with that objective? Connecting with yourself. So who's the grand architect? So where have you come up with this objective? How have you come across it? Where's it come from? Did you invent it? Uh-huh. So how do you go about building the perfect inner temple? Is the inner temple already there? Or you have to access it? Or do you have to build it? So you're talking about refining your personality. Refining your morality. Do you think there's a natural morality? Or do you think morality is conditioned? So are you either moving towards or moving away from the correct building of the temple, do you think? We're all building a temple. Some of us are either building it correctly or incorrectly, based off of our choices. Sounds a little bit like karma, what you're talking about there. Yeah, well, that's part of it. You can't separate these things out. Mind, body, spirit, thought, action, inaction. That's the temple manifest. Your whole experience is the temple, and all of those elements are what make up experience and how experience unfolds. Experience can't stand still, so it has to keep growing and evolving and changing, turning the wheel of the Dharma, the Buddha called it, turning the wheel. So it has to keep rolling on. So you bring all of your action and your thought, your behavior, your morality into alignment. Protect it, keep a close eye on it. And so your experience evolves due to your own design, ultimately. The Buddha talked a lot about skillfulness, developing skill. And so, he talked about those who are skillful essentially generate enlightenment for themselves. They generate peace. They generate happiness. They generate freedom. And those who are unskillful do the opposite. They generate disorder and chaos and misery and suffering. They generate stress. So becoming skillful means being conscious of exactly what makes up your experience. What is the governing power of the present moment? Because that is what's in charge. That is what dictates what goes on, what happens, how this experience evolves. So you have to know what that is. You have to come into contact with it and see its ways of doing things. How are you going with attaining the goal? Do you know why we detach ourselves from desire? Do you know what that's for? So there's a natural momentum of the mind which causes experience to keep evolving. So if you stop eating and you stop drinking and you stop talking and you stop engaging with the world, your body dies, right? So if you're sitting still and you see that there is this instinct to eat and drink, but you don't respond, your body desires food and it desires water, and you don't respond to that, well, the body dies eventually. That's a form of desire. You can have desire for an object, or desire for a person, or desire for an experience. Essentially, it's the same thing. It's a movement of the mind which you then follow after. So you chase after that desire and you fulfill your desire. You get what you want. That's what it means to be a being. You are made of desire. You are made of the same energy. So if you detach from that process, slow it down and stop it, you bring all of the processes that have been going on in you up to that point, all of the desires that you've been chasing, which arise from conditions and conditioning, you bring those to an end, and that's how you break the cycle. If you break the cycle, you step out of karma completely. You totally detach. And that's what the Buddha referred to as nirvana, enlightenment. Where all of the movements of the mind, not the brain, not just the brain as well, but the movements of the mind that give rise to experience within life, all of that ceases because there's no more movement anymore. And enlightenment is realized at that point. So that's why you detach from desire. Lust is one of the hardest to detach from. So that's the objective. The Buddha laid down a path to cultivate that, to realize it. Not just the Buddha too, there are other forms of practice. So how are you going with your goal? Are you close to it? Are you far away? Do you know? So you're not very set on the goal then? You're not very driven towards it? It's not a very deep intention of yours to realize that? Fair enough. Well, relaxing is a big part of it. Relaxing and letting go. There's a time to apply pressure. There's a time to release pressure. Hello, Michaela. What's going on? Fair enough, you're always welcome to lurk. More of a Taoist than a Buddhist. But I do like the Buddhist teachings. The Buddhist psychology is very helpful for other people. We find Taoism is quite hard for people to grasp. And Buddhism has a great, let's say, a great psychology department, which is very helpful in the modern world for helping people to not get so caught up in stress. I'm glad to hear about it, Michaela. Sometimes these things take a little while, don't they? But I guess you could say in my lifestyle I'm more of a Taoist than a Buddhist. Taoism, modern Buddhism has been kind of turned towards humanity a lot. It's about helping people to end suffering, whereas original Buddhism, as in the Buddha was more like a Taoist in the way that he turned away from people, he turned away from humanity, he turned towards his own mind, his own experience, and looking deeply into his own experience. Whereas the Taoists, they turned away from humanity, but they turned towards nature. They turned towards the cosmos and the universe. But modern Buddhism has become very focused on humanity, human beings, helping people to live more peacefully with more compassion and more kindness for each other. But the Buddha's teaching was not about that. Not about that at all. Okay, there were certain parts of it, but actually most of those elements came up when the Buddha was talking to lay people, regular people, about how to practice in their lives. But the deep Buddhist practice was essentially taught to monks, to Buddhist monks, followers of the Buddha who wanted to also realize nirvana, awakening, enlightenment. So yeah, it's depending on you as the individual and what your aim is. It's possible to get confused and to kind of turn in the wrong direction when it comes to the practice. But Buddhism has a very nice psychological element to it, how to live more peacefully, with more kindness and more compassion. But it's also, some parts of it are very, very intellectual. It can be very, very conceptual, whereas Taoism is more about the practice of awakening. And the energy of awakening. Cultivating the energy of the present moment. So they're all kind of different aspects of this experience. They focus on different parts of this experience. And Taoism can be quite hard to grasp. So, turning towards Buddhism in terms of the language can be helpful to a lot of people. But Taoism seems to be only relevant to a small number of people, or a smaller number of people. So you've got some antibiotics, Michaela. Hopefully that does the trick for you. Yeah, it'll probably take a little bit of time for the swelling to go down. But hopefully the pain is lessening. Oh, the swelling went down. Okay, that's good. So there must still be a little bit of swelling on your inner ear, maybe? If you're still deaf. A little bit of a blockage in there. Antibiotics can take a little while to work. Completely, anyway. Strange things, the bodies, aren't they? Doesn't take much to put them down, to break them. Are you still there, Shredder? Do you consider yourself a Buddhist? Ah, very cool. So what do you study? Do you have I have heard of Gnosticism, yeah. Do you have what do you refer to? Do you have specific practices that you utilize? You have a teacher? So how do you feel about practical realization? So the practice of awakening, the practical elements. Which means it's not based in knowledge. The direct path. Agnostic, theistic. Can you explain that, Michaela? That's an interesting combination. So you have the knowledge of these arts and sciences and schools and traditions, and the knowledge passed on by other people. But if you follow the source, right, let's say you go back to the original guru or the original leader or the whoever it is of that particular school, and you ask yourself, what were they doing? Because they weren't referring to a book. Those people, the people that the tradition is built upon. You know, there's knowledge in books, great. That's useful for some things. But what were they doing? Where were they looking? Where did they go within themselves to find that knowledge? Because it wasn't in a book. For those people, the books came after them. The books were written about their teachings. The books were written about their message. So where did they go to get the message? Ultimately, it can't be anywhere other than the present moment. The Buddha looked into this mind and body. Jesus fasted and went to be totally alone in the desert. Lao Tzu, the founder of Taoism, spent years alone in nature. None of these people had books. None of these people had teachings to be told what was going on. They had to look somewhere. They had to go somewhere within themselves. That's what true Gnosticism is, and true Hermeticism. Mysticism is another term for it. You have a body, you have a mind, you have a life, you have the capacity to look into this mind and body and life. If Lao Tzu spent years observing the nature of the universe, well, do you think that's a different universe to the one you live in? So that's the source of mysticism, your own experience of the present moment. But it's very deep. There are various levels to it. There's a psychological interpretation which contains the ego and the sense of self. Then there's the physical body. Then there's the present moment itself. And if you go deep enough, now you're looking at the nature of the mind, which is not physical. So there are various levels to this present moment, various dimensions, if you want to put it that way. So true Gnosticism, meaning knowing what exactly? The path of knowing, the way of knowing what exactly are we talking about? Whatever it is that we're talking about cannot be separate from your own experience. If it was separate from your own experience, you wouldn't be able to know it at all. God, exactly. The nature of reality, exactly. The universe, the cosmos, the mind, enlightenment, whatever name you want to give it. Buddha, Shiva, Krishna, the All, Allah, whatever name you want to give it. That cannot be separate from your experience. Your experience is born of that thing. Apparently, according to the teachings, there is this great all, and you and your experience has arisen out of that all. And so if you look deeply into your experience, you reconnect with the all because you're part of that. You are made of that. The all built you. Talking about you as the individual human being. You're from there. That's your history. That's where your consciousness originated. So if you go very deeply into just this consciousness, which is not knowledge, it's not in a book, it's not from somebody else's mouth, it's your own experience. So if you go into that alone, you're at the source. You're doing what the Gnostics do. You're doing what the mystics do. You're looking very deeply into your own experience, but very deeply, with intense skill in observation. Now that's the difference between reading all the books on how to climb the mountain and just climbing the mountain. If you're smart and you take your time, you'll learn how to climb the mountain by yourself. You might try and get up the mountain and it's quite difficult, so you stop. Okay, you've learned a little bit, you come back down, you reassess, you re-prepare yourself. Now you develop new skills and you try again next time you get higher up. That's the difference. To study the knowledge gets you absolutely nowhere. You could spend a whole lifetime in a village near the mountain reading all the books or listening to all the other gurus and teachers, and you will never move closer to the mountain the entire time. But eventually, when you feel enough of a pull within yourself, enough of a desire, enough of a need, like the Buddha walked away from his whole life, like Jesus fasted and walked out into the desert alone, prepared to die or meet God. Don't know if you know the story. He was done. Either I find God or I'm done with this life, ready to sacrifice himself for the path, for the objective. Anyway, to recognize that it's your own experience to look into, that's it, means there is now no other authority over your path other than yourself. Other people can help remind you and help you to learn where to look, but they can't do the looking, and your realization does not come from knowledge. It comes from looking and seeing. It's the seeing of the nature of reality that creates realization. You have to see it. You can't understand it. Understanding doesn't do anything. It might seem like it does, but understanding is temporary and doesn't change the experience of reality. But seeing into reality, by definition, changes it, changes your experience of it, especially when you see deeply. And that's what the detachment of desire is for. To relinquish desire. And actually, another way of saying that is to relinquish worldly desire so that you can spend more time looking into your experience itself, which requires a lot of silence, actually, mental silence. And simple watching. It's a practice. It's something you actually do. So anyway, that's the real version of Gnosticism, mysticism, Hinduism. Christianity too, actually. But that's deep Christianity, which is what Gnosticism is. But actually, a lot of Christians and the church, some elements of the church, they don't really agree with the Gnostics, you know. That's modern Christianity anyway. A lot of modern Christianity doesn't agree with Gnosticism. But that's irrelevant. The only thing that matters is, does it work? And if you're doing it right and you're looking in the right place, it can't not work. It's funny, you know, because the Buddhists go wrong. Some modern Buddhists go wrong in the same place that the modern Christians do. In that so Gnosticism is about realizing Christ consciousness, whereas modern Christianity preaches that there was only one Christ, there is only one Son of God, and you must put your faith in Him. And only through turning to Jesus is it possible to enter the kingdom of heaven. And Buddhism has a similar element, you know. A lot of Buddhists think that there was only one Buddha. No, he didn't, that's right. A lot of Buddhists think that there was only one Buddha, there will only ever be one Buddha, and that you have to turn towards the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, which means the brotherhood and sisterhood of monks, and lay people who support those monks. You have to turn to that to find enlightenment, otherwise there's no other way. And then there's another element of Buddhism which talks about everyone is Buddha. Everything is Buddha mind, called Buddha nature, and it's within everyone. The Gnostics teach the same thing about Christ consciousness. It's in everyone. You become Christ. So isn't it interesting that there's all of those dualities within these traditions? Funny that, isn't it? I learned quite quickly that there's a certain level, right? And beneath this level, some things make sense beneath this level to be true, and it looks that way. In your perception, it seems that this is the way it is, and that's the only way it can be, and that that's the truth, and that there's no way to deviate from that. But then, when you transcend that level, you suddenly see that there's a whole nother level of reality beyond what you used to think. So now you see why this is true, but also why when you reach this next level of perception, that's no longer true. And so you have a lot of people stuck in that level, and then you have people who've transcended it, and there's no way to communicate between them. You have to transcend it. Man cannot see it, yeah. So the Buddha's teaching, the Buddha's version of that is that the senses cannot perceive reality. Your eyes cannot see it, your ears cannot hear it, your body cannot feel it. Which is what Jesus means by the kingdom of heaven cannot be seen by man. The human part of you, the physical body part of you, cannot perceive heaven. Heaven meaning the place where you are whole and reunited with God. The human part of you can't experience that. Same way that a spaceship can't be the universe, or a planet can't be the whole universe. Yeah, there's a lot of corruptions and a lot of misunderstandings along the way of the teaching, unfortunately, but that's just human nature. It's human nature to confuse reality. Yeah. Kabbalah. Yeah, realizing the inherent heaven. I've got a little bit of experience with this sort of thing. I looked into a lot of traditions, mystical traditions, and how, and also looked into certain elements of the religions that came out of those mystical traditions, and I got an insight into how they deviated, and I also went into the practical elements of awakening, which allowed me to see how and why there's a lot of confusion around these different traditions, and a lot of confusion around truth and reality and God. But that didn't just come from the book knowledge. I got interested and went down the road of the book knowledge early on while I was learning how to practice. And then after that, after a certain realization, I stopped turning to books for guidance and started to look into this experience itself, which is what Jesus did, and that's what the Buddha did, and that's what all of these ancient mystics who established these teachings did. They looked deeply into the present moment, and that's it. All of these enlightened monks and mystics and ancient sages, the Tao is not anywhere else. Buddha mind is not anywhere else. Christ consciousness is not somewhere else. God is, even if you understand the traditional normal definition of God, it's omnipresent, meaning it's everywhere present. So wherever you are right now, whatever is God is right there with you. So to look elsewhere for it, or to believe that you're going to meet it later is, well, that's a lie. That's a deception of the self, deception of perception. To know that God is omnipresent means wherever you are, it's right there with you. The question you have to ask yourself is, can you see it, or rather, can you turn towards it right now? Because if you can't turn towards God right now, in communion with that energy or force, if you can't turn towards it like an ancient hug welcoming you home, then you don't know where you are. You have no idea what you are. If you have conscious contact with that force within you, well, you're done. You're complete. You do whatever you want. Nothing can touch you. So, but it depends how you want to word it. The Tao, the Buddha mind, God, whatever, the kingdom of heaven. It's not in a book. The books are just about descriptions. The books, the knowledge, even the teachings, well, the verbal part of the teachings, they're just descriptions. And as somebody once said, what good is a description of a steak or an apple to a starving man? He's dying. He's starving to death while you're describing what it tastes like and what it looks like. It does nothing for him. He has to eat the food for himself. That's the difference. That's true Gnosticism, mysticism. That's the difference. People spend their entire life looking to the books or waiting for or trying to get a teaching from somebody else. And the only real teaching is one that points you towards yourself. At that point, you need to be dealing with yourself and looking deeply into it. And now you're really learning. But it's not like anybody else is giving you that or showing you that. It's your own revelation, your own realization. But, of course, people get it confused. No? How's your dog? A lot of dogs are scared of thunder, aren't they? I don't think I've ever met a dog that wasn't. Interesting. Welcome to the channel, Shredder. I'm Shredder. I'm not Shredder, you're Shredder. I guess the dogs really feel it. Feel the rumble deep inside them, you know. Plus, they probably hear it 10 times more intensely than we do. New follower, Michaela. Slowly ticking up, isn't it? Slow and steady, that's good. At the moment, we're pushing the, what do they call it? The average viewers. Yeah, so I'm at 2 point. I think I'm at 2.5 or 2.53 average viewers for a stream, and I have to get it to 3, so almost there. Everything else is ticked. We've got 50 followers. I've streamed enough hours, etc., etc. I've had 5 people talking at once. I think that's part of it. And yeah, so now I just need to reach an average of 3 viewers. And then we'll be there. These systems are really strange, you know, because like it puts pressure on you. It's weird. I mean, it doesn't. You don't have to let it, of course. You don't have to let it. But the way they present themselves is it encourages you to put pressure on yourself. We're at 2.2. 2.2 average. You know, it gives you all of your stats and then encourages you to like do better next time and do more and more. Which I guess, okay, maybe that's good. But you can easily get trapped by it, you know, you can get consumed by it. Always trying to get better and do more. And you sort of try to build up on never-ending excess, always increasing. Which is, obviously you don't have to play into it, but I just find it interesting that that's the way these systems are designed. You reach one goal, and then as soon as you reach that goal, it pushes the next goal in your face. Now you need an average of 75 viewers, etc., etc. So, you know, it encourages constant pushing, always striving. And it doesn't reward relaxation. Imagine if there was some sort of element to this whole streaming thing that encouraged you to not be chaotic. You know how the most successful streamers are always busy, chaotic, doing things, spending lots of money and putting on big exciting shows for everyone. And then so other people do the same, to like Mr. Beast, you know, spending thousands upon thousands of dollars doing crazy things. And it's like, it's interesting that that's the society that we have now, where people value the most exciting, extravagant, chaotic, noisy things. That's promoted. Like, that's not sustainable long term. That's how you burn a society out, as in burnout. Try to get everybody climbing the same mountain on top of each other. Imagine if there was a platform that offered a reward for the most relaxing experience. Okay, ASMR, I guess, is kind of along those lines, isn't it? But even that's half just sexual these days, if not more. Anyway, just a weird reflection on the weirdness of our society. We're a strange creature, aren't we, humanity? An average of 1.11. That's a good number. I just followed you, Michaela. Hello, Jesse. How's it going? Welcome. Nice to see you again. How have you been? I had a great week. Hanging out with the kids. Yeah, it was fun. I'm doing good, thank you. It's been a very nice time to be alone and to just be self-centered. You know what I mean? To just be undisturbed and undistracted and unengaged by other people and the happenings of the world. You know, when you're with kids, right? And you watch kids, they're just like playing, you know? They have their own toys. They're totally self-centered. They're contained in their own motivations and their own feelings and their own thoughts about things and their own perspectives and their own little enjoyments. And you, as a parent, in most circumstances, under most conditions, you keep the world away from them and you keep them away from the world. Occasionally you might watch a movie or something, but they don't sit and watch the news. And my two, when they're with me, they don't particularly engage with a lot of other people. I'm not a very social person. And so there's a tremendous peace that wins and dominates because of that. When you're alone for extended periods of time and you're comfortable in that space, there's just a great relaxation to it. There's a great freedom that comes there. You don't need to know what's happening with other people, and you don't need to tell everybody what you're doing and what you're going through. You don't need to. Of course you can. But you don't feel the need to impose yourself on life around you. And so there's a great freedom and relaxation, a mental freedom and a mental relaxation, and a physical relaxation that comes from that. So it's been a nice week. Define a cool space, Jesse. Are you happy? Are you chilled? Are you on a level of got my shit togetherness? Or getting my shit togetherness? Or shit is coming togetherness? Sometimes I just can't get comfortable. Right, I see, yes. Well, that's what shit coming together means. Shit is coming together. Not my shit. And I'm not getting my shit together. And I'm not getting shit together, but shit is coming together. Often is warned with. Shit is opening up. Shit is coming up. Shit is coming out. Shit is happening. Ah, that's good, isn't it? So it feels like you're sinking into something, does it? Feels like you're sinking into some kind of space within yourself and your life. I want to show you guys this cool video that I've made recently. I'll put it on in the background while we talk. This is the place where I live. I made this video as an update for my YouTube channel. But yeah, you can see in the background where I've been in this house now for about a month. This property. I was living in a caravan I've been in a caravan for 2 years with my kids on the weekend, and it's a small caravan. So it's been a very, very challenging couple of years. So this week that I had them is the first time that I've been with them in this new house. No worries, Michaela. You may have told me that you were a streamer before and I couldn't remember, so I went to check your name on Twitch, and I see that you've got a channel, so I decided to follow you. So, Jesse, if you're still around, what is the cause of this newfound deepening? Do you know? Why are you now letting go? Can you letting go feels a bit more natural. Why does it feel more natural? Can you identify it? So this is the actual house where I'm at right now. What have you been holding on so tightly for? Sorry, what have you been holding on to so tightly? I see. Do you find in your line of work that your line of work specifically encourages or that there can be a little bit of a trap? I don't know if trap is the word that I want to use, but a kind of a habit. Because the knowledge of the elements of psychology is so vast and all-encompassing, that within that line of practice, it's very easy to become mentally controlling, whereby the knowledge actually facilitates the development of a control freak. Like, because of this knowledge, I must control myself now in such a tight way. Because there's trying to control circumstance, that's one thing. Trying to control your environment, that's one thing. Trying to control other people, that's one thing. Trying to control yourself, that's another thing. But then there is the stress and the restriction, the self-imposed restriction that knowledge has inherent within it. Sometimes our knowledge gets in the way of our ability to deeply relax and let go in the company of other people. That's what I'm trying to get at. Letting go feels a bit more natural. Interactions with people feel deeper. When we let go of ourselves, which actually means also all of our knowledge, all of our even previous learnings and previous experiences and previous insights. When we let go of ourselves in the face of other people, we can let go of a lot of this tension. Knowledge can reside as tension. Yeah, right. You would have heard the term emotional intelligence, yeah? So you've got your, what is it, your IQ and then your EQ. Anyway, the terms don't matter, but sometimes you'll encounter people who are so present. They are so in tune with you when you're with them, when you're in their presence. They are so in tune with you, and that in tuneness is not knowledge based. Yeah, right, exactly. Here we go. Yeah, to fix myself. I didn't know I would do it professionally. Yeah. Well, that's an interesting concept in and of itself, isn't it? Fixing yourself. Are you broken? Which part of you is broken? But that's another question. You don't have to answer that if you don't want to, but it's an interesting path to go down that road. It's an interesting path of exploration. What is broken exactly? What is being fixed? Is it that which is broken, which is trying to fix something? If that which is broken is trying to fix something, then the idea that there is something to be fixed is actually part of the thing that is broken. If that thing is removed, what is left to fix? Anyway, I've kind of gone off track a bit here. What I'm getting at is, when it comes to knowing, awareness, and presence, it is not based in knowledge. Your ability to be totally present with yourself and with someone else and let go in the present moment is not the result of knowledge. I was talking to somebody the other day about realization, and when we were talking, they made the comment that the way that I used to think, which led me to this realization, is I'm done with that now. And I had to help them see that it's not in thinking. Realization doesn't occur through thinking. Realization occurs from seeing. When you see something within your experience, a realization happens. From that moment on, your psychology tries to understand the realization, but the realization has already happened. Your thinking, which means your understanding, arises from realization. It doesn't lead to realization. And so the trick with this is that it's not conceptual, it's realized. So you learn to look deeply into this presence, into this body, look deeply into this psychology, and from there the realization happens. So what that means is you can bypass years of wrong effort. You can bypass years of cultivating in a way that actually doesn't generate any real substantial change, but keeps you confined within the same prison cell of trying to understand something. Now, people who go that way tend to become control freaks because they're living in a very confined space of specific knowledge. Then everything that happens, they compare it to their knowledge. So they become controlling. Accidentally, unconsciously, they become controlling and they don't realize it. So anyway, that's just a little bit of what you said, what inspired my thinking. Oh, that's wonderful, isn't it? Yeah, that's beautiful. Life is unfolding and exploring itself in all directions, everywhere. This psychology is a part of that. This conditioning is a part of that. And it fluctuates through extremes. It fluctuates between extremes. So it goes very deeply into distress, and that experience is so unpleasant that it begins to seek the way out. Is that broken? Is that process broken? Or is the descending into hell and despair part of the process which leads the psychology to seek a way out, and hence let go? Is that process perfect? You're not doing that. I'm not doing that. Life is doing that here right now. It's happening. You're the witness, you know. My teacher, you know, you like these analogies, don't you? These metaphors. My teacher gave me another one, Jesse, which is really quite good. You can be on a boat in the ocean with the sail up and the wind is carrying the boat. You can lay back and relax on the boat knowing that you're being carried by the wind and the currents of the ancient ocean. These winds have been circling this planet for billions of years. Who do you want to be in control here? You with your ego, or this ancient force of life itself? Anyway, so you can be on the ship, relaxing, being carried, watching where the boat goes, knowing that it's in the hands of the Tao. Essentially, it's in the hands of God, it's in the hands of the universe. Or you can be on the ship as the captain, at the rudder, you know, steering, trying to control the ship and where it's going. Not realizing that actually, no matter which way you turn the boat, you're not really in control. You can try to steer this way and steer that way, but wherever the wind is going and wherever the waves are going, If you're not in alignment with that, you're going to smash up and crash up against the waves. You'll destroy your boat. So are you really in control? Or you let go and the ocean carries you. And if you want to, learn to steer with the waves, learn to steer with the wind. Be guided by, be held by nature. That's the universe at work. If you try and take control of this boat and steer it in a way that is not suited to the current, you will trash the boat and everything on it will be destroyed. So who is really in control here? Now, learning to let go is like that. You have to be brave though, to take your hands off of the wheel. And it might get a bit rocky and it might get a bit turbulent. You will feel fear at times. You may even have to put your hands back on just to regain yourself. But as you're learning to take your hands off, that means you can just let go. And eventually you'll realize that no matter what storm you are carried through and how turbulent the waters get, if you lay back and relax, always relaxing, always accepting, you always make it through it. And you're always in alignment with what's happening because you're not trying to maintain the illusion of control, which is where the schools of psychology tend to go, trying to maintain the illusion of control. So you relax, you let go. And that means now your mind opens up and expands to reach out, to connect with the forces of the ocean and the forces of the wind. And that's the path. That's the path of knowing yourself. Because really you're the ocean and you're the wind and the boat and the person on the boat. You're all of that. I can't remember why we got onto that. So being not broken means that there is this psychology here, and it is built through conditions. Conditions build up on top of conditions on top of conditions. It comes with a name, this body. It has family, it has genetics, it has DNA. All of that has been at work for tens upon tens of thousands of years, this process of evolution in the body and in the psychology and in the consciousness around this planet. Who am I to come along and say that's broken or wrong? So you let go. You let it be, you let it do its thing. Now you as an individual, there are places and things in life that will cause you great misery and that will cause you great relaxation. None of those things are wrong though. It's just that some will cause you pain and misery and some will cause you relaxation and happiness. And you'll find if you let go and relax and release this desire to control, you'll find that you open up a lot more space for joy and connection and presence, which feels great. This is just down the road, 20 minutes it is, this walk. Talk about space and openness. People forget that, don't they? If you go outside and look at the ocean, where does humanity go? When you look at the trees and the earth and the animals, you tend to forget humanity, don't you? And so right along with that goes a lot of the problems. We do. It's part of the process. Life is happening without error and without concern. It's just that human beings get a little bit befuddled and worried and anxious. So you're relaxing more, letting go, coming back to presence. That's really good, Jesse. I'm glad to hear it. Would you say you're spending more time in presence? Is that connected to what you're experiencing? Do you see a connection there? More time being mindful? Ah, good. You know, it's possible. It's possible to see the timelessness of experience, right? You can look at the present moment in a way where there is no perception of time. What that translates to is you are looking and you are looking at and directly experiencing and knowing this the same moment in time that has always existed and that will continue to exist forever. It is not possible to look at that and think that it should be any different. You cannot see that, come into contact with that, and know that directly, and you cannot look at that and think that it should be any other way whatsoever. To witness that is the same as total self-acceptance, total absolute unity with the mind of the present moment. From that point of view, nothing can ever be wrong. Everything that is happening is life happening right now in total unity, oneness. If you're not aiming for that in your practice, what are you aiming for, quite frankly? And that's not a personal statement, I'm just saying. to think that you can come into contact with personal development, self-mastery, self-improvement, growth, spirituality, if you think you can come into contact with any of those things and it isn't what I just described, which is not mine, by the way, I didn't coin that, to think that you can attain any kind of peace or tranquility or stillness or insight into what this life is and it's not what I just described is a falsehood. It's a corruption of the ego to think that there is some other realization to be had or that there is some other goal to spiritual cultivation or self-mastery. If it is not to come into direct contact with that timeless awareness of all of life itself, which is aware of this present moment in totality, in which it sees that everything that is present is totally perfect and that it has always been this way and that it will always be that way and that it cannot possibly ever be any other way. If it is not that, it is not total self-mastery that you're inquiring into. You're inquiring into a corruption of the the ego's interpretation of what self-mastery is. So, to know that means, or to hear that, or to be told that means, that's what I'm looking for, to acknowledge that in myself. How can I possibly aspire to any other kind of realization? Or rather, I must hold that as the ultimate. Okay, I can go through various levels of training and motivation and self-hypnosis and personal development and relationship connections. Great, wonderful stuff. I can talk about what kind of job should I do that's going to motivate me and how can I earn money in a way that's meaningful. Great, those are all really beautiful things. But to hear that it's possible for you to gain this connection and present insight into your experience, which is one with this timeless perspective of life itself, which can't be corrupted and is in total unity with the mind of God or the mind of the present moment, the mind of the universe. To hear that and to not aspire towards that, to inquire towards that, well, essentially it's a waste, unfortunately. It's a waste. That's really nice to hear, Jesse. That means it's becoming more total for you. Because obviously the present moment is everywhere, isn't it? We talked a little bit about escapism once upon a time, and escapism is an illusion. When it comes to presence, you can't escape it, it's everywhere. But people, because they have so much distress and trauma in certain circumstances, they try to escape that and find peace elsewhere. Then establish a safe space to go into. But as you come in, and that people function that way because it's a corruption of peace. What they're experiencing or what they're seeking is a corruption of peace. It's a corruption of the present moment. It's the present moment that's held within very certain conditions. Whereas actually, find true presence means that you never lose contact with that, because it's what you are, and whatever you are that now, you will be that tomorrow, you will be that over here, over there, upside down, inside out. You're always that at your core. So the only reason I say this is because it is important to get clear on what you're doing, you know? It's important to get clear on the reality. What am I doing here? Is it my intention in this life to look so deeply into myself that I know this? Is that what is most important to me? Is that my highest priority in this life? Okay, I can have relationships, I can do all of these things that I'm interested in and passionate about. But when I look at the total picture of my life, so that when I'm on my deathbed, it's time for me to depart and leave this body behind, I can say, I got there this time round, found it, didn't waste this life, I got my answer. That's a question for each of us to answer for ourselves. Bit of judgment about yourself or judgment about others. Possibly one and the same. Judgment with regards to what? There's judgment and then there's observation. If I can see my behavior is lacking, my commitment and dedication is lacking, my insight is lacking, then I judge myself, not emotionally, but I can see there's somewhere I need to improve. That's an observation, that's not a judgment. But to think I'm not good enough, I was bad, I'm a bad person, this means I'm not worthy, these are all your emotional judgments. Those, only the ego can think that way. But observation is a bit different. Observation means this is what I can see. And it's actually emotionless. But it is a lot, and I understand that. The reason I brought this up about this perspective of timeless presence, right? The reason I brought that up is because of what you said about letting go in the face of other people or in the company of other people. Interactions with other people feel deeper. When you have enough confidence and enough courage to maintain your presence in the face of other people and to not corrupt yourself because of what you think people want to see or hear, or what kind of person you think people want you to be, you can maintain contact with this timeless presence in which your true expression, your true relaxation, your true peace emerges from you, and you hold no judgment over that. It's released. It is set free. Jesse is set free in those moments. Fear was the barrier. Yeah, great. It is a new level. The thing is, we don't know. That's this part of us that understands is limited. Our ego. This is why we're not held responsible. When you're stuck in a dream, your consciousness is stuck in a dream, that's the best it can materialize. Everything that it has experienced up to that point is all it knows. It's like a child. But as you in there keep returning to the spirit of the present moment, the energy of this life opens up to new dimensions. And now the dream is over, because your consciousness is no longer contained in that cell. But you didn't know any of that before. You couldn't see it. You weren't in contact with it, so you can't blame your past self for not knowing either. That's another trick of the ego. You can't really blame yourself for not doing it sooner. To come to it now and to truly embrace it now and to dedicate yourself to that now, that is literally the best you can do. And when you know, or when you're told and eventually you see how it is an unending process, you are always deepening. You are always returning more deeply into yourself. If you're facing in the right direction, either that or you are facing in the opposite direction, which means you're chasing after the brain, its understanding, its knowledge. And if you're heading in that direction, you are forever restricting and confining yourself. So you're either going in that direction, which they call hell, or you're going in the opposite direction, which they call heaven. And I remember I said this in Jim's stream, and I think a couple of people had a problem with it. Because it's an absolute statement that there is only... You want freedom and relaxation and enlightenment, there is only one way to go. To chase after knowledge, to chase after understanding is a restriction on your mind that will confine you to greater and greater stress and anxiety. That's what happens. To turn in the opposite direction, which means to turn towards absolute presence, is the opposite of that. You abandon restriction and your mind is repeatedly opening, relaxing into the present moment. So you're either going towards stress and confusion and anxiety, or you're going towards freedom from that and peace. I guess some people have a hard time accepting that because they're still invested in the knowledge. They think they're going to get somewhere with understanding, and that's fair enough. For them, okay, leave them to it. It's not our place to change people's minds, but when you've done that, when you can be so honest with yourself that you can say, I can admit it. I chased after the knowledge for 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. I believed that there was relief in there or some sort of truth in the knowledge. But after chasing that roundabout over and over and over again for all those years and realizing that when I gained a little bit of insight, it was actually temporary relief and it was replaced by a new level of tension and a new level of stress because now I have new questions that I need to go and seek an answer to. Now I end up stuck in this roundabout. Eventually you reach a point in your incarnation, in your karma, where you recognize it. Okay, I keep going around on these roundabouts. Shit. But now you recognize it, so you do something differently. That's a great place to be, but it's hard for some people to acknowledge that because they still haven't yet been around the roundabout enough times to identify what you're trying to refer to. So this is where you get your insight into different levels of evolution. People are differently evolved. And that's fine, it doesn't matter. It's just a case of identifying for you where you're at. And then learning how to turn and face the right direction. So that you don't keep getting entangled in the stress and the misery and the suffering. If that's the way you want to go, of course. But it's hard. It's hard. It takes a lot of self-reflection. And there's a lot of ego in the way for a lot of people. There's a lot of competition, and there's a lot of fear, and there's a lot of my knowledge is better, or I have found the answer, you know. So it's hard to break through that sometimes. So it has some answers, you know. If you're in a forest, deeply inside the forest, you're looking very close up to the trees, you know. You're looking very closely at the bark, the little bugs that are on the trees and the leaves. And so yeah, you can gain a lot of insight. But you will never gain the perspective of floating high above the forest. Looking down at the trees, you will never see the boundaries of the forest. And you will never see the sky above the forest, or the earth floating in space. You will always, your perspective, your knowledge will always be limited to what it's like inside the forest all the time. In the darkness, the trees block out the light, you know. Dealing with all the creepy crawlies and the insects and the bugs and the animals. Okay, that's part of it. But it's a fraction of the big picture. It's just one pixel of the experience. Whereas if you leave and transcend the forest and rise above it, of course, you can go back into the forest whenever you want and talk to the bugs and deal with the leaves and the bark and hang out in the shadows at any point. There's a lot of interesting things in there, psychologically. Strategies of psychology, great. Strategies of manipulating psychology, great. But you can also totally leave it all behind at any point and be hanging out in a deep space and a deep perspective, which obviously has a very different perspective on what psychology is, because it's observing it from a distance. It's not stuck in it, and it's not consumed by it. And to get consumed by knowledge, outside of your head there is no knowledge. There is no knowledge outside of the brain. So seeking knowledge means you stay stuck inside the brain, which is the forest. It's stuck inside the forest. The weeds, they call it in Zen Buddhism, being stuck in the weeds. So there's nothing wrong with going into the weeds, but if you're stuck in there, how can you ever hope to transcend all of the chaos and all of the anxiety and all of the problems and all of the limited perspectives that are in there? You can't. It's just not possible. Because you're in there. So while you're in there, you're limited to that point of view. So to learn how to transcend that and let it go is essential. Obviously, if you want to have a total picture of your life and what you really are, then you have no choice. You have to transcend it. That is an absolute truth. That's the mountain, and by that I mean you can sit at the bottom of the mountain, and I can sit at the bottom of the mountain, and someone else next door can sit at the bottom of the mountain, and every single one of us has our own unique point of view on that mountain. That's relative, yeah? That's my history, my name, my history, my culture, my views, if I have them, my beliefs, if I have them. That's all yours. You have yours, I have mine. But actually, we all have the same mountain. The mountain is not yours alone, it's mine as well. And him next door, it's his mountain too. So the nature of the mountain is the same for all of us, obviously. It's one mountain. But what you think about that mountain, or how you perceive it, or what you believe about that mountain, that's all relative, and that changes, chops and changes. But the mountain is one. Suffering is the mountain. Ego is the mountain. The nature of consciousness is the mountain. The nature of reality is the mountain. It's not personal. You can think whatever you want. It doesn't change the mountain. The mountain is the mountain. The absolute truth is the truth, regardless of what you think. But what you think about it, that's up to you to decide. You can think whatever you want to think about it. You can like it, hate it, love it, want it, don't want it, but the mountain's not going anywhere. It's there whether you like it or not. It's a fact. And so, liberation from suffering is ascending the mountain. Can you climb all the way to the top? At which point you're... And here's the thing, Jesse. Here's the important thing to grasp, right? When each one of us has a perspective that's unique. Yes, you have a perspective on truth. But your perspective on truth is not the truth. The truth is the mountain. It's a very important distinction. You have a perspective, as do I. But what do we have a perspective on? That's the same. That's not unique. The thing that we are looking at is one. Your perspective is unique. It's totally yours. Nobody can see what you see in the way that you see it. The thing to grasp is, when you climb the mountain, and so do I, when we get to the top, our sense of individualness is gone. Given the way that reality materializes as matter, right? You know the top of the pyramid? How there's no cap. There isn't a top of the pyramid. So this mountain that we're talking about here, it's material. It's a material manifestation of reality. So we think we're individuals. We have our own unique perspectives. But there's a secret that people don't grasp until you get to the top of the mountain. That's that there's a dimension of reality that is invisible. It has not materialized as form. And when you get there, you drop the body. So you can potentially guess what happens if these two apparent individual bodies, both of them at the same time, being individuals with their own unique points of view but climbing the same mountain, when they get to the top and they reach the part that's invisible, what do you think happens? The part that thinks it's an individual disappears, and actually those two apparently separate bodies realize that they are one. They are actually the same life. That's enlightenment, union, yoga. That's what awakening is. Anything less is not awakening. If you're still in the dream of separateness, you haven't woken up. And that's what people don't realize. Self-mastery is that. It is not just learning to be a human being that is happy and find the kind of job that you really want to do and master your psychology through self-hypnosis. It is those things, but it is not just those things. Reality manifests matter, which perceives itself to be individual and manifests individual material forms. That's how it gets to know itself. But when the form is dissolved, there is only one life there. The part that isn't material, it's one. And so if 2 people or 3 people or 4 people or 5 people climb up the mountain of self-mastery and awakening, when they get to the top, they all arrive at the same place. Because there's only one up there. The body that's materialized to be separate and individual, apparently separate and individual, dissolves. That's why the top of the pyramid is invisible. There is no capstone. It is invisible. And it's one. There's only one life there. They call it the eternal, the immortal, the enlightened mind. And that's absolute truth. It's not the relative truth part. That's in the matter. Relative to the perspective of the individual, yes, that's there. But the part of you that is absolute is one. It's the same part of me that is absolute. We are the same thing. And that's what people don't grasp because, well, it takes years of cultivation to come into contact with that. And that's where somebody like me, really, I find that the most important point to impress upon someone who's beginning to question and seek. Because while you are seeking knowledge, you are still in the brain, which is connected to the part of you that is material. That's the opposite direction to the part of you that is immaterial. So seeking knowledge can never bring enlightenment, ever. It's a factual impossibility that knowledge can bring enlightenment. It's not possible. And so it's up to each individual to say to myself, I must ask myself, do I want enlightenment and awakening? Is that what I'm doing here? Or am I happy with the limited knowledge of the brain, the knowledge of psychology, the knowledge of psychiatry, the knowledge of mental health, the knowledge of self-hypnosis and motivation and this thing that everybody does, am I satisfied with that? Or is the real reason that I am here, is that about enlightenment? Because I must get very clear on that, because the answer to that question dictates how I have to govern myself. I have to stop myself getting caught up in the knowledge, obviously, because I want to go deeper. I want to know what this enlightenment thing is. And that's the part that's why a lot of people struggle with absolute truth. Because people still think they're individuals. They're still stuck in the perceptions of the brain. Of course it looks like I'm an individual. It looks like you're an individual. It totally does, and you have a unique perspective. Nobody's denying that. But if you look very deeply into this thing that you think you are, the body, the psychology, and you pierce all the way through it, well, when you get to the top of the mountain, the whole earth disappears. All the matter, all that has materialized, all the form, and all of the karma that was stuck to that, it all dissolves. And oneness with the whole universe is realized. That's the enlightened mind. That's one. Every single being who has become enlightened realized the same mind. That is the truth. That's why we all, the people who reach that place, that's why they can all talk about it. How could they talk about it if they didn't? And when you look at the teachings, how can you see the similarity in them? Different forms, yes. Same mind, awakening to the same mind, the same truth, the same absolute truth, which is the nature of reality. The very definition of reality is the thing that's real, right? So if it's real, it has to be the same one. Because it's real. It's not a different reality. The one true reality, the nature of reality. The very definition of the term means it has to be the same one that people find. If you find reality and I find reality, how could they be different realities? It's not possible. Anyway, I'm going on a little bit of a tangent here, but I don't know, maybe there's something in there for you to play around with. It's just important to identify the need for clarity. If you are the kind of person who is genuinely looking for answers, an answer to the question of what is suffering and how do I end it? Why do I experience so much pain in my life? Why does life seem to be full of so much pain and anxiety and stress? And is there another way to be doing this? Is there a deeper meaning to all of this? Is there something I need to realize to end this pain that I'm experiencing? And I can acknowledge this pain, and I'm not hiding from it. I'm not pretending that I'm happy. On the contrary, I'm acknowledging my limited perspective and my pain and my suffering and my confusion. I'm seeing it, and I'm holding it, and I'm holding it up for myself to see more deeply. If I really want answers to what this is, I have to get very clear on this fundamental fact that it cannot be found in knowledge, because knowledge is limited and it is purely based within the limited perspective of a single entity, an individual human being. Lots of individual human beings looking at life using their brain, trying to understand what life is and then writing that down. All of that is in the brain. Outside of your brain, there is no knowledge. So, the reason it's very important to make that distinction is because the only way to end the suffering that you experience as an individual is to kill the perspective of the individual. That means transcend the ego. Stop looking at life only through the brain. That's what meditation is for. How do you being here now with your attention, you're right here, right now. How do you govern your attention in a way that stops you engaging with this knowledge-seeking faculty of the brain and instead diverts your attention to total awareness of presence, and then sustains that long enough for it to be realized? At which point, when you fully realize, because it's sustained, it's fully sustained. Your attention on the present moment is fully sustained. With that full sustenance comes the realization that you are all of life. That this part of you that thinks it's separate is an illusion. That's not what you are at all. That part will die. Soon, with the brain, when the brain dies, that part will die. But you are all of life. And that's not an intellectual realization. You see it. Now, you're done. In terms of seeking answers to the end of suffering, you're done. Nobody can ever tell you ever again. You can't tell me what's going on because I'm looking at it. And if you think, don't take this personally, but I'm talking about a person. If I can see what's going on, why are you telling me about it? For you to think that you can tell me what's going on means you can't see the fact that I can already see what's going on. Because if I can already see what's going on, why are you telling me what I can already see? And so, when you get there, there's no more knowledge and you can't be told anything anymore about what the truth is. Don't get me wrong, you could still teach me how to look after horses and how to bake a cake if you know how to bake, you know what I mean. You can still share a bit of knowledge. But when it comes to what is true about what you are and what I am and what this is, this reality, there is no more need for explanation on this side of the equation. Now, there's still lots of things we can share. This experience of connecting and sharing and loving and evolving and growing together. But there is no more need for an explanation of truth. That's the difference. I am now not seeking knowledge of truth. I was for a very long time. Now if I seek knowledge, I want to know what the latest game is that's coming out, or when this update's happening, or how to bake a cake or make a pizza, general knowledge. But when it comes to the truth, the knowledge of truth, there is no more seeking anymore happening. So, and I'm going to leave it here. I only bring that up as a little suggestion because when I watch people, I pay attention to them, and often I can identify when people are sincerely seeking truth, and there are sometimes barriers to that seeking, and there are sometimes misdirections. People tend to get caught up sometimes in illusions, really, which seem to have answers, but they don't. They have answers that lead to questions that lead to answers that lead to questions that lead to answers that lead to questions. That's knowledge. But the real reality, when you get there, that's the end of knowledge. The knowledge of the truth, anyway. When you get to reality, it stops. The seeking stops. Well, there you go. This is what you're doing for a job, so it's deeply within you, and it wants to be deeply within you. And so I guess it's very important to make sure that you're looking to the depths. Thank you for being here to share this experience. It's nice talking to you. And I will talk to you next time you're around, okay? You're here. Feel free, you're always welcome to jump in and say hello, or not, just sit back and listen, just be present for a bit. But I'm always happy to talk to you, okay? Have fun inspiring yourself, inspiring the world. And I'll see you again very soon. And have fun with your horses. Say hello to them for me. Alrighty, I'll talk to you later. Goodbye for now.